Welcome to the brand new episode of Cast It to the King, the show where we talk about sports, movies, and life. I'm your host, Joshua Mickle, and as you can tell right now, this isn't your normal show because right now I'm on a little bit of a drive, running some errands, and now I'm going to be getting back to work per se. But in terms of this particular moment, something big dropped yesterday that I have to talk about, and it's going to be the main topic of this show. And we're just going to get right into it because it is that big, and then we'll talk about a few other things that's going on with the Grizzlies, Titans, and other things that's going on in the world. So right off the bat, it was announced per TheWrap that the Sony Spider-Man universe, essentially Morbius, Venom, Madam Web, all of those Marvel-related movies, Kraven coming up this weekend, the universe is officially dead. It's scrapped. The tracking for Kraven the Hunter is not looking really good, and a more chilling effect to that is that they have spent a grand total of all these movies, from the first Venom movie in 2018 all the way up to Kraven, upwards north to $500 million, and haven't seen a good return on said investment for the money, supposedly, after you account for marketing and all that stuff. And so with this universe is dead. Like, it ends with Kraven the Hunter this weekend. What does that mean, and what's my initial thoughts to it? Ding dong, the witch is dead. That's what I say. Is because we never asked for these. Or, for clarification, if you were going to do something like this, like a Venom movie or a Kraven movie, we want it to be connected to the MCU. We wanted it connected through with a thread line with Spider-Man. You chose to do it without Spider-Man, and not only that, the quality of these movies is just hot garbage overall, and the audiences have said so ever since. For some folks, Venom 2 was that. For some folks, it was all the way through the first Venom movie. Because if you look up every single movie, we don't know what Kraven's score is going to be on Rotten Tomatoes. Technically, there's no fresh score by Rotten Tomatoes standards for any of these Sony-related Marvel movies that don't feature Spider-Man in name or anything of the like. None of that at all. So for most folks, financially, it took a dive with Venom 2, and for those that want to say, well, didn't Venom 2 come out in 2021, where theaters were partially open and closed? At the time, you can say that. At the time, you could say that. You can't say that now because of what happened 2 months later in the cold, where flu season and COVID season were on a high, where you had Spider-Man No Way Home, despite not having a China release, almost make $2 billion at the box office. It is still the number 2 overall biggest opening weekend of all time, behind Avengers Endgame. That's despite the fact that folks want to say, oh, there were restrictions for COVID at the time, which, again, hindsight, it was all moot, and it was all stupid, because the COVID is like the flu and cold on steroids. It's like you can't be canceled for that now. For this universe, the quality with we all know where this stems from. This stems from a man named Avi Arad, who has been with Marvel since the Stone Ages, has stuck around with the Spider-Man property forever, it seems like, since the dawn of time. He has single-handedly responsible for the debacle that some fans claim that the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 3 movie to be, the debacle downfall of what the Amazing Spider-Man 2 was, that led to when the emails were leaked and such things were let out there for the public to see and say, hey, like, we want, let's broker a deal with Marvel Studios / Disney, because they make the better movies with their high octane characters. Like, when they get their hands on their tier 1 IPs, like a Spider-Man, like a Deadpool, Wolverine, we're about to see it possibly with Fantastic Four, with X-Men. What we have seen when they get their hands on their tier 1 properties that they haven't had when they first started their cinematic universe, because realistically, when they started the cinematic universe, Iron Man was never a tier 1. He was like tier 2, tier 3. Same with Captain America and everyone else down the line. Even Black Panther, like, at best he's tier 2. Now Black Panther's tier 1. Now Iron Man's tier 1. Why? Because you have Marvel Studios make such great movies out of them and propel them into the limelight. And thus you wonder if they can take a tier 3 or even 4. Guardians of the Galaxy is tier 4. No one had heard of him. I only heard of him, like, in passing of what the idea of Guardians of the Galaxy was. And they made Guardians of the Galaxy tier 1. I mean, at worst, tier 2. And so one had to wonder, one could imagine the possibility when they got the ability to make Spider-Man movies for Sony with Homecoming, Far From Home, and No Way Home, what Marvel Studios can do with a tier 1 IP. We know what they could do with a lesser tier and propel it. What can they do with tier 1 IP? And they have propelled Spider-Man in a way that Sony has never seen before financially, and in some cases critically. Even though that title still falls to Across the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man 2, back in 2004. Like, those are the top 3, like, critically Spider-Man acclaimed films that Sony still has in their back pocket. But overall, Marvel has not turned out a bad product for Sony. Now, how does this wrap into the cancellation of this VenomVerse, essentially? Avi Arad is, like, he's the producer, like, he's the Kevin Feige of this debacle that he has overseen. And I think the CEO, Tom Rothman at Sony, is going to use Kraven when it flops, and it will flop, because the film needs to make anywhere of $300 to $400 million just to break even. And it's not tracking to do well in theaters. It's opening in 1,000 less theaters than Venom: The Last Dance. It's opening up to 3,000 theaters in North America. That is not good. That is use. I mean, yes, that's self-sabotaging your film, but it costs money to put your movie up on more screens at a time. And so what Tom Rothman's probably doing is probably cutting his losses and making the blowback financially lessen. And so Tom Rothman is going to use this final nail in the coffin with Avi Arad to finally boot him and not allow him to be in development of any other new projects for the foreseeable future. Now, fast forward after we get through the Spider-Man Noir Amazon series, after we get through Beyond the Spider-Verse, whenever that sequel finally comes out, I'm convinced it's going to come out on the 10-year anniversary of Into the Spider-Verse, which is going to be nuts, in my opinion. You have to wait that long for a cliffhanger of a sequel. And after we get the sequel to No Way Home with Spider-Man 4, which is rumored to be coming out in between, I don't think it's rumored, I think it's been confirmed. It's coming out in between Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. Once you get those 3 films on the launching pad, then maybe you could flirt with the idea of making spin-offs again. But the idea of Avi Arad having the hands on the steering wheel, per se, having the keys to the car, I don't think that's going to happen again, because I think this is the last straw for Avi Arad. He has done, like, for folks like Kathleen Kennedy, for example, she runs Lucasfilm right now. Pardon me. For folks like Kathleen Kennedy, if you look at her film resume and what she has done in Hollywood, it is like top tier, amazing of the films that she has touched and how good those films are, and the directors involved in said films, of how much she has contributed and how great of a producer she is. And then she gets to Star Wars, and later on in her career, she's not as effective as she was early on in her career. Her time has come and gone as somewhat of a producer and definitely as a studio head. For Avi Arad, even though at the time it was fine, even though it they had to sell off, he was head of Marvel at the time essentially. He brought us the 90s cartoons. He essentially started the zeitgeist of what made Marvel popular, essentially, is those shows in the 80s and especially in the 90s. And without that, I don't think you see the propelling of Spider-Man in the 2000s. I don't think you see the propelling of X-Men in the 2000s. And thus, without the 90s and late 80s cartoon content from Marvel, without that, one can argue you don't see the foundations of what you see in the MCU today not the foundations of quality films per se, but the foundations of hey, you have a structure of a fan base there ready to go, ready to support you if you give them a good product that they will enjoy and love and cherish and share with others that aren't fans but can get hooked on. So Avi Arad did that. Marvel went bankrupt in the late 90s. They had to license off the characters. Thus, Sony still has to this day the Spider-Man license to make movies. Thus, the Spider-Man films they've done since 2000, their collaboration with Marvel Studios, and them making the spin-off films with Venom, Morbius, Kraven, and Madam Web. Overall, with this particular thing, I think going forward, and to bring back a quick history lesson here, there was a fallout in 2019 after Spider-Man Far From Home had been released, that apparently not only did Marvel, at the time, after Far From Home was released, the contract between Sony, Marvel Studios, and Disney had been completed. So they had to make a new deal. And so supposedly in this new deal, and I think Disney is in the wrong for this, but in hindsight, maybe, their intentions were wrong, but the details were wrong. And I mean by this, back in 2019, when they were trying to negotiate a new deal to extend Spider-Man's stay in the MCU and to have Marvel Studios to make more films of Spider-Man for Sony, Disney wanted a 50-50 share of co-production rights on everything Spider-Man related, including Venom, including Morbius, including Kraven, Madam Web, or any other Spider-Man spinoff that they were going to do, and have Kevin Feige head up quality control essentially, because Disney owns Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige heads up Marvel Studios as a production company. If someone else wants his services and his company services, then they can't be at the time essentially doing it for 10% of first gross of box office in terms of salary, in terms of payment. So Disney they and Marvel Studios wanted co-production rights on the rights to the character and the production costs of movies and subsequent movies. As a shareholder of Sony, you might as well write your resignation letter if you are Tom Rothman at the time and you say, yes, I agree to that deal. Because you essentially sign away your control of the Spider-Man IP. I get that as a company. You don't want to give away control of your property. That is your most profitable property ever for Sony Pictures and Columbia Pictures. You don't want to do that. But in hindsight, if we were to get quality control with Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios having a say in what Let There Be Carnage could have been like, what Madam Web could have been like, what The Last Dance for Venom could have looked like, what Morbius could have looked like, and what Kraven the Hunter. I mean, we haven't seen Kraven yet. It could be a good movie, but the perception of it is not there. So imagine, one can think, what I said earlier of what Marvel was able to do with side characters and lower tier properties that they had in house by the time they were making movies. What could they have done with Venom, with Kraven especially, with Morbius delving into the horror aspect of it, with Venom going back and forth of setting something up with Spider-Man, and they teased that in the post-credit scene of Let There Be Carnage, and then at the post-credit scene of No Way Home, they booted him back to his universe like nothing happened. And then they retconned the post-credit scene in Venom: The Last Dance, which I think Avi Arad just basically either just did that in spite of it. Like, they just reshot the whole thing in the Venom movie. I bring that up to say, conceptually, it would have been the better move to have Marvel Studios have a hand in whatever spin-offs that they do for quality control. I think going forward, right now the current deal that Sony has with Disney and Marvel is that they split the cost with the production budget now, and then they get said box office return. So right now it's set up to where Sony has 75% of production costs, and they yield 75% of the box office returns. And then for the remaining 25%, that goes to Kevin Feige, Marvel, and Disney as a whole. And then for the production budget for that, and then for the box office returns for that as well. And for No Way Home to almost make $2 billion. Almost make $2 billion. I believe the budget on that was about $200 or $220 million. Not including marketing, but just taking to production budget per se. Just the production budget. Just the production budget alone, 75% of $200 million is, if I'm doing my math correctly, I want to say that's roughly around, okay, Josh, do the math in your head. 50 of 200 is 100. Okay, so then subsequent after that, that's roughly about, say No Way Home is $200 million, and Sony is 75% of that. That's roughly over $130 million that Sony's responsible for. The return that they got for roughly around 130, 150 that they contributed their hard-earned money for yielded great returns for them. Great returns for them. Same goes for Marvel Studios with their 25%. It yielded a good return for them as well. But mainly for Sony. I think going forward, Tom Rothman is going to use this slate of films with Avi Arad having control, overseeing, use this and dangle it over at the shareholders and say, hey, creatively, we are going to pay out to Marvel Studios them to make the Spider-Man movies for the foreseeable future, because with the announcement of the VenomVerse dead, essentially, with the announcement of the VenomVerse dead, essentially, after Kraven the Hunter, they are waving the white flag. They are saying Spider-Man is in the MCU indefinitely until further notice. And so, with that being the case, Tom Rothman is going to say to the CEOs, any other spin-offs that we do, live action especially, that is not connected to the Spider-Verse, which Phil Lord and Chris Miller have their hands on, and they're doing with Spider-Man Noir and Amazon, and we'll get to that quickly. Anything that is involving a spin-off, like say Venom gets introduced in a Spider-Man movie and they want to spin him off and do a Venom versus Carnage movie. Marvel Studios will now have a say and have quality control for Sony now, because Sony is essentially now going to get out of the the Spider-Man movie making business when it comes to Spider-Man live action per se. When it comes to the Spider-Man mainline Spider-Man MCU stuff, is that they're just going to say, going forward for anything Spider-Man, which they're already doing essentially, but especially now for the spin-offs, they're just going to say, Marvel, here's your check, here's what we want to do, how can we do this, can we make this a TV series, can we make this a movie, here's the check, and we want the returns, because we know you make good movies. Overall, you make really good movies, and especially coming off of Deadpool and Wolverine. So, bottom line, this year for Sony, they had Madam Web, then they have Venom: The Last Dance, and now they have Kraven Hunter, all going out whimpers box office and critically. Kind of like how last year it was with DC, when you had. Was it last year? Was it last year? I think it was. It was last year. Kind of like last year when you had with DC, their final slate of films, no one went to go see and nobody cared because the brand had been damaged and they were waiting. And that's why James Gunn came in and he's rebooting the DC Cinematic Universe. People have had enough with this slate of Marvel films from Sony that have nothing to do with Spider-Man, have nothing to do with the MCU, heck, even have anything to do with Miles Morales and the Spider-Verse films. They are done with it. They have been bamboozled one too many times, and now they have said enough. We're not doing this anymore. We're going to take our money elsewhere, essentially. And with that, good riddance to Avi Arad. He's served his time well, but he's been in the Spider-Man movie business far too long. Look at Borderlands, look at Uncharted, look at some of the other films that he has produced, and it has not been good. It has not been good per se. But in terms of everything else going forward, good riddance to his universe, and hopefully it yields a better future going forward. All right, next up, we're going to be talking about this. The Memphis freaking Grizzlies are finally, after a rough start to start out the year, let's say that, a rough start, we can all admit that, are now in the upper peninsula of the top tier teams, the top teams in the NBA Western Conference. Now, I have said this on the show, and I will repeat myself. This year is the Ja Morant Revenge Tour. Those that wanted to slight him, negate him, forget about him, forget what he was in 2022, and the year before, and want to prop up Anthony Edwards or other folks on lesser teams, go ahead, have at it. Let's just keep dunking on you and just keep beating you up the wazoo. And the last two wins between Washington, yes, they're a bottom feeder team, but it helps to beat the bad teams because you're supposed to beat bad teams when you're good. To lay the whooping on the defending champion Celtics was bittersweet. And I'll tell you what, as this roster continues to build chemistry, it's looking really, really good as the year goes on, especially John Morant and Desmond Bane and others can get nights off. We have a deep, deep team. Scottie Pippen Jr., Gigi Jackson's going to come back eventually. We got Brandon Clark. We got Huff. We got the Huff man. Thank you, Lakers, for Jeff Huff. We got Scottie Pippen Jr. as a backup point guard. Thank you, Lakers, again for the freebie player. So, oh, by the way, last I checked, you were 10th or 11th in the conference. So, yeah, thank you for that very much, Laker fans. Zach Edey will be back eventually. He's dealing with an injury, but he's been doing really well in his last few games on the court before he got injured. And I think, hey, yeah, teams better be looking out for the Grizzlies because we just had this topic on the show. Which one team do you not want to be facing right now? The Grizzlies are that team, no question about it. You're thinking, oh, it's just a small market. No, they're ready to bring the hammer on you and give you fits at night. And yeah, I'm enjoying the ride, and let the ride continue. Let the ride continue. Let the ride continue. Next up, I'll touch on quickly here. Will Levis and the Titans. Why does it not surprise me? No, it's Josh, how can you watch Titan games? Like, if they suck and they lose, they keep losing and losing. Why do you keep watching them? Because that's why I'm a fan. I love my team. I want to support my team, but I can't not watch games and then say, oh, they're bad and here's why they're bad without watching. It makes no sense. Like, it's like saying, hey, I've seen Gladiator. This is before I saw Gladiator a few weeks ago. Like, I've seen Gladiator. I think it's one of the worst movies ever made. Why do you say that? And I don't give you reasons why, or I give you false reasons, and it's not even related to the movie. So, yeah. Will Levis, yeah, I'm done with them. We're all done with them. We're all done with them, with Nicholas Petit-Frere and PF at right tackle. We are done with that piece of garbage on the right side of the offensive line. Jeez. This, for the last few weeks that folks have been saying on the Twitter spheres, the YouTubes, the social media of Will Levis has improved these last 4 weeks prior to this past week. He's improved these last 4 weeks. He's improving. You can roll with him in 2025. You can roll with him and give him that shot there. Okay, let's assess the claims, shall we? Let's assess the claims. First game, he's back from injury versus the Chargers. He has, in the entirety of the whole 60-minute 4 quarters, he has one good drive in the first quarter, and then he only has another good drive in garbage time, the last drive of the game in the fourth quarter. Garbage time. 2 drives that game. Okay, 2 drives that game. Next game versus Minnesota, he has a stellar third quarter that I was hoping and believing that was the Will Levis we were going to get to start the year. That third quarter versus the Vikings. But what happened the first, the second, and then after the third quarter? He missed his reads. His pocket awareness is hot garbage. It is trash, man. It is just utter putrid. He only showed up the third quarter. Where was he the first, second, and fourth quarter? He wasn't there. He wasn't there. And then fast forward to Houston. The win versus... Yay! A win versus Houston! I hope you enjoyed that, because that could give us a top 3 pick right now. And potentially draft a quarterback. So I hope you're happy with that win versus a rival. He did well the first quarter. He did well midway through the second quarter. Then after that, he just was pathetic with reading the tea leaves of where to step up in the pocket. And hey, our line's not doing him any favors either. But the majority of those sacks were on him. And then after that, he has one good dump-off pass in the third or fourth quarter to Chick for 10 yards, and then he takes it the distance. And, yeah, that's one good pass in the third or fourth quarter. what was he doing the rest of the quarters? He was non-factor, and he wasn't contributing at all. Now the next game versus Washington, did nothing, absolutely nothing that game, nothing. Throwing like half the balls that were dropped were just blatant drops by the receivers, but the rest of the time he's like overthrowing, like throwing out of reach, not throwing where you have a catchable ball for the receiver. It's like either at the tip of the hands, the receiver's got to extend out. The sideline, I can't remember when it was, second or third quarter of the game, or maybe, yeah, somewhere midway through the game, where you have a dump, like one of his many dump-off passes to stat pad his completion percentage. He throws it to Chig on the sidelines. No one's in front of him. If he throws it like right in the numbers real quick, Chig can pick up a first down and then some, probably. No, he throws it like uber high. Chig has to lay up and catch that ball, and then he falls to the ground out of bounds and can't catch the ball and can't run after the catch. Oh, and yeah, Will Levis' only contributing factor that game was the last drive before halftime. Congratulations. One drive going into halftime, Will Levis was good. Non-factor for the first, all throughout the second, beside that last drive in the second quarter. Third quarter non-existent. Now we fast forward to this Jacksonville Jaguars game that folks are saying for 4 straight weeks, he's improved. He has improved. No, he has not. No, he has not. And it laid bare with the Jacksonville game. It laid bare. He missed he left 3 touchdowns on the board. And we only scored 6 points in the game where we lost 10-6. We're done. Will Levis ain't it. He's not the franchise guy. He can't be. And the crowd, like this, this being a home game just emphasizes, the crowd has not looked this sparse since COVID. Since the COVID crowd restriction rules that the NFL placed on teams. And Tennessee was one of the highest attended COVID games, COVID-related teams in the NFL. They're among the highest, if not the highest, ranked in terms of attendance for football games in 2020. Crowd size is that sparse in size in 2024? This fan base has had it with Will Levis and this team. They have had it. They don't want anything to do with this. And if you're Amy Adams, the owner, you care about money. You care about revenue. You got a new stadium coming out in 2027. You got to show your shareholders, your season ticket holders, something for them to get excited about, or else they're not going to be paying you money for those tickets anymore. And then you're going to be losing money. You got to do something about this. And I have to imagine Amy Adams is not stupid enough or blatantly like ignorant enough to say we're going to roll 2025 like we did this year with Will Levis and the same coaching staff. No changes, just bring improvements on the line, give maybe another weapon, improve the right guard, right tackle. There you go. You have no excuses. You have an improvement on your right tackle, right guard. Kush is coming back for center, which he was good for us. A great improvement over Aaron Brewer. You have a Pierce Skoronski at left guard, and you got J.C. Latham over on the other tackle spot. You have no excuses on the line. You have no excuses next year. Then Will Levis goes out and performs horrid again. What are you gonna do? You can't justify this to the fan base anymore. The fan base has checked out. They have checked out of the season of false hope. And even though some were thinking, hey, this is a rebuilding year and you don't know what you got at quarterback, those same folks that I hear say you don't know what you got at quarterback are defending, it seems like, to the detriment of this team, of finding reasons to keep Will Levis. And their reason is, oh, we're not in position to draft a quarterback. Who's to say we are? Amy Adams could trade up, you know. She could trade up. We traded away the first overall pick in 2026. Who's to say she can't trade up? I mean, the Rams traded back in the Andrew Luck RG3 trades. They traded Washington back, and then years later they traded up to get Jared Goff. So who's to say that can't happen to us between a X amount of years? Who's to say that can't happen with us? And say we get into spots 1 through 3, or okay, let's make this. Let's do this. Spots 1 through 4. Say we're in spots 1 through 1, like at worst 4. Those same people will still find an excuse to not draft a quarterback that's available that high, because Travis Hunter is going to go to a team in the top 4. T-Mac out of Arizona is going to go to somewhere in the top 4. 2 of those top 4 spots are going to be quarterbacks, and the other 2 spots will not be quarterbacks in this draft. This is not going to be quarterback 1, 2, 3, 4 with the picks this year. It's not going to happen. It almost happened last year, but it didn't. It went 1 through 3. This year, it's not going to go 1 through 4. You're going to get 2 of the top 4 spots are going to be quarterback spots with Shedeur and Cam Ward. That's that. And so, if you're in position to pull off a trade, you have to signal to your shareholders and fan base for 2025 and beyond why they should come to games. Because no one is going to be coming out to games for Will Levis or even a quarterback, or even a Mason Rudolph if he tried it out next year. They're not going to show up for that. They're not. They've checked. This fan base is not like the Vikings. It's not like the Cowboys. It's not like the Steelers. It's not like the Eagles. This fan base in Nashville are good fans of the Titans. They're good fans. But they are fair-minded fans in terms of they will not sit around. They will not waste their money, their hard-earned money, to watch garbage on the field. They will watch it on TV for free. They will watch it locally on their TV for free, or go to their friend's house and watch it for free. They will not waste their hard-earned money to get close-up seats, get box seats, or even nosebleed seats. And even in the nosebleed seats, you saw folks sleeping. It looked like on the TV, folks were sleeping in the nosebleed sections during the Jaguars game. That's how god-awful we are in a position right now with this fan base. And this team ain't doing any favors. If we're going to trot out Will Levis again next year, it's not going to do... we ain't doing ourselves any favors. Because a lot of people, the majority of fans are of the mindset that Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan have essentially been given a mandate by Amy Adams last offseason. You got 3 off seasons to solve this quarterback issue. If you don't have something for me by the end of this 3 years, you're out. You are out. Because you ain't going to have nothing for me and still be on staff by when my new stadium opens up. You will not. You will hit the streets. And so, this is year 1. Next year's year 2. They are not. I cannot see a scenario where they are going into year 2 with Will Levis, and then their final year, use that year to get a quarterback. And then have that over Amy Adams, and show that to Amy Adams with the key thing. It's we have our franchise quarterback now. Please give us extensions so we can develop this rookie. No, we ain't doing that again. We're not gonna. We better not do it again. In a logical world. I would believe we live in a logical world, because it's the same logical world that did not give in to Mike Vrabel's insane demands to have 2 other people as guardrails for Rand Carthon, just so Mike Vrabel can have yes men hired in the organization. I believe we live in a logical world where that doesn't happen, and it didn't happen because Amy Adams said, "There's no way I am doing this. This is crazy. You are nuts. You can go hit the streets. If you're such a top-tier head coach, go get a job elsewhere." Oh wait, he did with the Cleveland Browns. Oh wait, no, it's a consultant with the Cleveland Browns. So yeah, he didn't get a job. So yeah, Mike Vrabel ain't all that. At least for 2024. I envy the team. I pray for the team that thinks Mike Vrabel and their team's going to do good. I pray for Caleb Williams if he's the Bears' next head coach, because he is not going to do him any favors on that team. He's not going to do Caleb any favors whatsoever. None. Just none. Just none. All right. And last thing I want to close out the show is this right here. This show, there are 3 words that I center this show around: sports, movies, and life. Movies kind of stretch it towards like entertainment per se. You could say sports, entertainment, and life, but movies just sounds better for me. And it's mostly movies. But that last one, life. That topic ranges from a whole bevy of things. It can mean anything, like church related. It could mean what's going on personally with me, or what's going on in our crazy world that we live in today. In the crazy world we live in today, I will close out with this topic, is this: the assassination of that CEO from United Healthcare, I believe, is the insurance company. Seeing some of the online rhetoric for those that claim to be the voice of reason, standing up on their platforms, all giddy and celebratory over a man's death, a husband, of a father, celebrating that a man got killed, and praising this assassin. This is almost, I'm not going to say it's just as equal to the Trump assassination attempt back in July, where you had a sect of folks on TikTok like loathing that the shooter missed and that he shouldn't have missed. And I'm glad we don't live in that world where the shooter missed. Where the shooter didn't miss. For this particular world, it just highlights once again. And I watched Piers Morgan Uncensored, and he had on there the other day a former reporter at the Washington Post and formerly of Vox Media. And after this Piers Morgan interview, sit down he had with her, Vox let her go. They fired her for the outrageous comments she made, that she felt joy that this guy was killed, essentially, and praising the assassin. And I've had this talk with a few other people in terms of what social media has done to degrade and downplay what's supposed to be wrong, things that should be rejected, and things that are evil, that we should not be lifting up, propping up per se. And one of those things, and I won't say the word, but there's a particular word that growing up was not a bad word. Now we live in a TikTok social media world where that word is the equivalent of the F-bomb. We live in a world where the song "Baby It's Cold Outside" is getting canceled. And in that same breath, those same people that want to cancel "Baby It's Cold Outside" prop up to #1 on the song charts. Megan Thee Stallion's song with Cardi B, I believe. Wet. Fill in the blank. I'm not gonna say it because it's repulsive. It's degrading to women. And so we live in it's sad to see where we live in a culture, we live in a society where growing up for me as a 90s kid, I was born in 1993, the things that I was growing up with in the 90s and in the 2000s, where some of it would be unacceptable today. And the stuff that's acceptable today would not be acceptable growing up. It just wouldn't. And to say and to prop up such things, I mean, it just insinuates like the times we're living in. I mean, and social media isn't helping. I mean, the only good thing with social media these days is that on January 19th, TikTok is going to get banned from the United States because they're still owned by ByteDance, which is owned by the Communist Party in China that runs the whole company and country. A lot of that, I want to say over 50, the number was like somewhere between 50 and 70% of such content is pushed out of TikTok. So if anything is to come out of this ban that's going to happen on January 19th, is that there's going to be one less avenue to expose kids to, the younger generation, Gen Z, Gen Alpha to such propaganda. But then again, you got areas like Instagram, YouTube Shorts, you have Facebook. You still got those avenues to go to. But there's something to be said that we live in a society where what was thought as bad back then, like 10 plus years ago, is now good today, and vice versa. And it's just a reminder that, like, hey, like it says in the Bible, be transformed by this world, but don't conform to the ways of this world. And as a Christian believer, and I implore this to those that are watching and listening as Christian followers of Jesus Christ, like, it's more true now more than ever for what we live in. It's times are troubling. We didn't, like, nothing bad happened when Trump was elected to a second term. The world didn't end. The world will still keep on spinning. God knows what's going to happen today, tomorrow, the next month, next year, the next millennium. He knows what's going to happen. And so I think it's just I think today and the past week or so, I think it just serves as solid reminders that we need God more than ever. We need God more than ever to draw closer to in these troubling times. And I'll leave it at that. And don't forget, like, subscribe, share this video, comment below what you think about the VenomVerse being canceled, the Grizzlies on a hot streak, the Will Levis Tennessee debacle fiasco that's going on, and do you still have hope in this world? Do you still have hope and believe in that shining light of Jesus Christ that all is going to be well in this world? So comment below, let me know your thoughts. My name's Joshua Mickle, and as always, keep kicking it to the king.